Coach, hey, thanks for joining me today on this simple coach-to-coach interview. Do appreciate you taking the time. As always great to see you, my friend. It's been a while.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. This is. I actually thought about you the other day. Not that he would get in, but simple player number 3 was entertaining the idea of Johns Hopkins as a destination.
Yeah.
I don't think that'll happen, materialize, but I appreciate the gusto by which he's pursuing that. So you guys have to lower the academic standards a little bit. Just
if I was in the mix, I might put a vote for that. But stronger minds than mine are up top, and they know what makes Hopkins tick and is successful. So
I'd be there at preseason, but yeah, you would never accept a guy with a 2.8 GPA. So I'm sorry, I can't. I just have to look elsewhere for my opportunities.
Well, I'll never say never. I hate saying never.
So, anyhow, Coach, hey, let's start with the basic. Like, hey, let me get your thoughts on what's coming up in 2025. How you're thinking about your program, how you're feeling about the players you're getting in. Just give me a sense as to where your head's at.
I mean, that's a great question, and the answer is I'm not sure where my head is at. It's it's the first time in a long time. I usually sit down like I'm OCD and do a depth chart. And this year is so hard to do a depth chart. We lost 10 guys. And we have, and you have the two, like the COVID year ended, plus you have your regular seniors, so you're basically losing 2 classes at once. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of change with that. My associate head coach, William Venzel, did an excellent job. I would have never been able to do the job he did recruiting by myself. And so we're really excited about the talent coming in. But it is new. We're going to have to utilize them from the get-go. And I know just through coaching our system through Hopkins and some club teams that I've coached, it takes like 2.5 years to really get it down. You have to go through the experiences of the game to register, okay, I now see that this applies to that situation. Mm-hmm. And so they have to build up those experiences so that they can then rely on the foundation and understand how the foundation works for the team and for them to be able to make good decisions. So we know we have talent, but we're going to have to lean on those guys, and they'll have to kind of go through those experiences to work it out, which means there's the chance that going through that experience might be not a great result for us. But they have to build it and build that foundation. And hopefully in the future, that means that we're going to be a strong program to come. It doesn't mean I'm not setting high example or a high standard for this season. We still, humans are have the potential for amazing things. So as a team sport, we're looking to come together and do something amazing this fall and see if we can get all the pieces and the puzzle pieces lined up together. So wow, we might have had a deficiency in terms of experience, and maybe it's going to take some time to get the cohesion right. But if we're firing all cylinders, as a coaching staff, we're hitting every mark. And if the players come in ready to break some instincts that they come in with and not cling to them, well, we might be able to do something amazing this fall.
Mm-hmm. How many freshmen do you have coming in, or how many new players do you have coming in?
2 separate answers, but 9 freshmen.
Wow. So just by what you just said, I'm anticipating you're expecting that those guys are going to get minutes, whether I don't want to say whether they're ready or not, but that they're going to have to get out on the field and go through the course of games to learn how to play the way you want them to play. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Here's a question that I'm not sure anyone can answer. Based on what you observed from those players, do you think there's a chance that they catch on quicker than that, right? Because I'm assuming you don't pick players who there's not something about them where you're like, yeah, they're not going to be able to play the way we want to play. So I'm just curious, like, how close do you think these guys are to playing the way you want them to play? Does that make sense?
It does, and I think within 9 players, there's going to be players closer than others, and you're also like recruiting. Recruiting has a decent amount of margin of error to it that you're going to have a very strong, hopefully educated guess as to what you're going to see when it arrives, but it's always not what you think it's going to be. So it just depends on how open they are when they come in, how willing they are when I tell them this is different than everything else. And so you have to go through the hierarchy of competency again and take your unconscious instincts that are wrong based on our system and be willing to go through the steps through consciousness, getting it wrong, consciousness getting it right, and hopefully unconsciously doing it right for us. That takes time. And some people are quick to go through those, and some people are slow. That's hard for me to guess, but yeah, I'd say I hope at least half of them jump on the bandwagon immediately. I'm the kind of guy, as you know, with the PKs, I do things that people go like, what? Like, are we sure about this? And so it takes some trust to trust, like, okay, do I know what I'm talking about as a coach or do I not? And if I don't, and you strongly stand on that platform, we're going to have a tougher time because now I've got to spend a lot of time convincing you that I may know what I'm doing. And that takes away from just honing in on getting further on the path of our system.
All right, I'm going to ask you. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just looking at the background. I meant to put that picture there. He's watching Kyle, who looked like he was either doing his from a dentist office or maybe in the basement of a low security prison. And then Brandon, who's got this real nice presentation of frame balls and like a punch ticket thing and stuff like that. So they just gave me this photo behind me that they took down from a wall. And I was like, okay, I'm going to put that up and that'll be my whole background. But it's really small behind me. And then I'm looking at these cardboard boxes over here. So I'm just like, whatever.
You know what?
This is typically me. This is typically me.
Actually, I was going to say, based on the offices I've been in, like the cardboard boxes is a very typical thing of any college coach, I think, where they have boxes strewn around their office. I know some who've used them as tables, so I'll just leave it at that.
Well, that's us. We'll use whatever's there.
You are upping your game, though. It's good to see after all these years you're upping your game in the office decor scenario. So. All right, so I'm going to ask you this question, which I'm just curious. So I noticed your schedule. You're traveling to Gambier, Ohio, to face Kenyon and then Denison. And I guess the only thing that really pops into my head as far as a question was, what were you thinking?
That's what our business office said. So, well, one, it kind of piggybacks off last year's schedule. So, number one, I really wanted to play WNL right out of the gate for our 2024 season. And they asked us to come down there, which meant, okay, I don't want to just play one game. I try to front load the season at the beginning, meaning, yes, hopefully we come in fit and we're able to handle it, but it is a gamble. But the intention is the whole month of October for us seems like midterms. And when we go through that period, they're not getting a lot of sleep, or they're not getting the sleep they should be getting. So I try to open up that we're not going Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday every week in October, and try to find some weeks where I can leave that gap there so our guys can at least mentally recover from those tests and give them a little bit more time off. That requires me to front load the schedule. So last year, I couldn't find that second game. In the end, Swanee said, okay, we'll come down. They were playing Gettysburg because Gettysburg went down to play him in 23. And so I made the agreement and said, okay, if you come to us, I'll go to you. And then the second weekend was the same thing. Dan had reached out at F&M, reached out and said, hey, let's do a joint thing tournament-wise, so it takes some of the brunt off the facilities having to host, a game that they're really not involved in. So we did that, and that was Rowan and Kenyon, and the stipulation would be that we go back to Kenyon's tournament. So it's just, the reciprocal effect of decisions you made the year before. But I like it. Maybe financially it's not great, but I like how that schedule is set up, and I like to see the challenge. And certainly all four of those teams are going to Swanee, Rhodes, Kenyon, Denison. All four of those teams are going to bring different challenges, and it should be, based on what we talked about earlier, it should give our new guys pretty good bank of knowledge as we come out of those 2 weekends. Because it'll be completely different teams. I'm hoping for completely different systems. And so the more we experience different, the more educated my guys will get. And that's also comes back an answer to previous question is like, if we played a team all season, if every team played a 4-3-3, then my guys are going to end up the season not as experienced as I need them to be. So we need to experience all the formations. We need to experience all the problems for us to come out on the other side and go like, okay, if you hear us say like Gettysburg in a game where we're not playing Gettysburg, it means in the Gettysburg game, we figured out one problem, and this team is now showing us the same problem. Yeah.
Okay. When just based on your previous years, like how long, I'm curious, this is generally, like how long does it take you to figure out what are the pieces of the puzzle that you do have, right? So some guys can say, oh, preseason, I know everything I need to know, and then we're just going to play games. And then some actually wait for the real, the 90 minutes in a ball thing. Like, okay, when push comes to shove, what is it that we have? How long does that generally take you so that you have a better understanding of what your roster can deliver for you?
I think that's maybe a complicated question as well.
I don't ask simple questions, Coach.
Right.
I'm like hard hitting, investigative reporting here.
I know, and I wasn't prepared. But no, there's different pieces to it. One piece would be like for recruiting. A lot of times in recruiting, people ask us what we're looking for, and we often say, not sure. We're just looking for good players at this moment, because for the next class, we usually have to think about like the incoming class. We need to see them in preseason to see, because I am a bit of a mad scientist. I don't like just having a fixed mindset. I don't want this to sound like I'm just presenting a plug for the growth mindset book or anything like that, but I never want to get blind in a train of thought that prevents me from considering other options. But as a coach, you have to also be careful. Like I have taken center backs and made them forwards, and
Yes, you have.
when I do that, like people freak out, and so I have to be measured about when I'm going to introduce a freak out or pull back and hold that idea till later, until like the culture of the team is in the case that I've prepped them for. Okay, we're going to look at this possibility, because the last thing I want to do, and like I said earlier, we get trained by our experiences. So here's a small example of that, which is when I first arrived at Hopkins, there was a player that played holding mid, and he, I think, was on the verge of being cut from the previous coach to me. For me, it was like one of the best players we had. But the way he carried himself was so diminutive that he was easy to pass over, because there were very like boisterous players on that team as well. And so he just was fine taking like a lesser role, or, I'll cover this or that. If you leave a hole open, I'll protect you, or whatever. And it wasn't till we went down, it was his senior year, we have to play the gauntlet of, I believe it was Richard Stockton and CNU, and I think they were 4th and 2nd in the nation. And when he gets we get a free kick against CNU in OT, and he hits it upper 90. He had never taken a PK in practice or in a game, and I was like, whoa, that was amazing. And it doesn't get, he finishes out his career without another free kick. We do like a foreign trip, and then he takes two free kicks, 2 upper 90s, perfectly placed. And I'm like, what? Why didn't you tell me, man? Why didn't you step up or anything like that? So, I can't rely as a coach for players to step into their roles. I have to be, alert as a coach. I have to be constantly questioning whether I'm setting up some sort of biasness based on size or speed or athleticism or whatever, and make sure I like constantly deconstruct and reconstruct to see, like, will this work? Will it not work? Can that player play that position? And I don't want to, like, I have come away from seasons and gone like, maybe the right, play would have switched our winger and put him at forward because of the speed as opposed to the control. And so I never want to have that regret at an end of the season. So I kind of want to work through these ideas. And in our office, like my associate coach, like my best friend. And so like I like to like poke him a little bit, because like he's the one in charge of keeping me like from going too crazy. But I always go like, what about so and so at this position? And it's like, no.
Yeah.
So he has to keep me
bridge
somewhat
too far. Yeah.
Right. So I take center mids, I make them center backs. I take outside backs, make them wingers, or wingers outside back. I even in 2022 I took a winger and made him a center back, and that was not like ideal results, but because his first game he passed it straight into our goal, but we laugh about it now. It did get us to a certain point, and I think it was needed. Sorry, I kind of like
That's okay. That's
just
okay.
went off
It
there.
just is there. I'm just curious, like positionally. assuming all think, they're in your program because they're good soccer players. So outside of them having to be good soccer players, do you have any like positional requirements where you're like, I must this player, like there's a famous chart, not a chart, picture. I don't know. I don't even know if it's real. Where some coach has this is what a Premier League team should look like, and it's like based on height, and so our center backs have to be 6'4" or taller. And do you have any such requirements? Because it sounds like I don't want to make it sound like you're loosey goosey with guys. Like, hey, I'll put you wherever I think you're going to be the best. But do you have anything where that would prevent you from moving a player? Because they're too small, or they're too big, or they're too...
Certainly not height. Like one of our best center backs was Tim Trinan, who was 5'9". So height is, height is definitely not it, because we've just had a whole pipeline of like what falls out of the trees is, hey, Craig, I got a guy for you. Let me guess, he could play D1 if he was bigger. Right. Yeah. So what is he? 5'8", 5'9"? Yeah. Or, he's just not as mobile enough. Okay. You're selling me on this blind date. She's got a great personality, right? Those guys fall out of trees. So like, as high academic schools has like a whole treasure chest of like these guys that are super technical, but maybe lack the athleticism of a D1. And so we've certainly picked out of that pool of players, and it's not as damaging in our style as it may be a more direct style. Because if you're technical, we can and we keep the ball, then your lack of mobility isn't as crucial, or your lack of size isn't as big of a deal. So. It's not a characteristic like height or anything like that. I'd say the number one is, are you composed? Because we make decisions on the ball. And and a lot of teams choose a tactic to press us because they don't want us controlling the game. So can you handle yourself under, stress and pressure is the main thing. When we go out and looking, is like individual composure.
Yeah, so, that's interesting. Well, that explains a lot. I mean, anybody who's watched you guys play, right? One of the things that's always amazing for me to watch is what you just said is how composed guys are under generally a ton of pressure. Because I think most teams, to equalize anything, try to put you under the gauntlet, and how able you are to work yourselves out of that with the ball under control and not get panicked and all those sorts of things. What again, sort of based on where you're at now, what are you thinking about the Centennial Conference, what it looks like, and where do you think you guys are going to fit?
Well, there's a lot up in the air. I think you got to start with Dickinson, who made a deep run in the NCAAs last year, and we're a very dangerous team attacking wise, and they return all those guys, and they're just not losing much. So you got to probably tip them to be a strong favorite. We lost 10 guys, and they all played. I believe F&M lost a great deal, but Dan always reloads when you think, okay, this is where F&M, we're going to get over them. But he does a great job with recruiting, so he's going to reload well. Muhlenberg's been in the last 3 Centennial finals. So Sean has done a great job there. But I can go on and on. Like McDaniel made the conference for the first time, so Steve did a great job last year. I imagine he's going to build on that. Swarthmore was, our guys would argue that Swarthmore game was the toughest game we played. And so I think Eric getting maybe just the right pieces, probably just a finisher. If he gets a finisher, they could be extremely dangerous. Gettysburg's going through a transition now, so we'll see what happens there. Ursinus has a new coach, and he seems young and energetic and is getting things done and knows what he's doing. Roy is always a mastermind, so I'm just going through all the schools. It's hard to say. I think if you looked at the teams that got into the tournament last year, I think the Centennial will, obviously. There's one conference got a ton of teams in, and they finished with 3 teams in the Final Four. So you got to say it's probably justified, even though people are going to moan and complain. I'm of the believer if those teams are the strongest teams, they should get in and have a chance for the title instead of saying no, like only half the team should get in. Let's make a rule or whatever. Nobody's really talking about that. They just want to complain. It's the system skewed one way or the other, right?
It wouldn't be soccer if you weren't complaining about how the system is skewed and messed up for everybody.
Right. But behind that, the Centennial had, maybe the next highest representation out of conferences, or third. I think the conference is getting, I've been here for a long time, but I think the conference is getting stronger and stronger. The coaches are on point, and although the Centennial hasn't broken all the way through, you had Washington College make the Final Four. We were a kick away from making the Final Four, and Dickinson
Literally.
a kick. So I think in those situations you just have to break through, and once kind of like the 4-minute mile, once somebody does it, then everybody feels like, okay, yeah, we can do it. I think the Centennials is probably at that ledge right now, where we just need one team to break through, win the national championship, and then the concept of where the Centennial falls, the people within it will believe in it a lot more, and you'll see what happened to Tufts, where they beat a very good Messiah team on a rough Muhlenberg field. The ball went their way, and they won the national championship, and now they expect to win the national championship. And so, I've seen that over and over again. It should be kind of a talk for businesses or sports, mentality that breaking that seal is very important. And the human mind, people in society want to say, no, you're not good enough, or you can't do this, you can't do that. And I just try to rebel against that. And I think what makes people reach the next level is having a vision that it can be reached. And maybe that's connected with being possibly reached by people you consider peers, and the people around you and the people you're playing against to go well, if they can do it. So if one Centennial team ends up winning the national championship, then all the teams that next year are playing against the national champion. And if they get a result, it boosts up their opinion of themselves instead of oh, they're the good ones, and we're just trying to fight to get our head to be noticed and recognized. And I do think that a good separation in terms of how teams finish is that mentality, and the belief that no, we're this good. And currently the NESCAC has that mentality, and the Centennial's trying to get that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you're right about the NESCAC. I think top to bottom, they all think they can win a national championship if they're given the right opportunity, right? Just by, making the tournament because they're in the top 4, or they make the tournament because they win the conference tournament. I think any team goes in there, and because they have the history as a conference of churning out national champions, and I do think there is something to that, where there's this inherent belief, oh yeah, we can do it. We're no different than anybody else in the conference. We can go and win it. And that's interesting that you're looking at a conference level, right? Because all it takes is one team to break through. And there's a whole set of crazy things that go into breaking through, right? Like, are you lucky? Do you make that one kick, to get you to the next round, and then suddenly things start flying? You have a different belief, different set of beliefs going into the next game, and what you're thinking about yourself, and anyhow, remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, the whole run Messiah went on is that they were the one team holding on to that belief, and everybody was just mentally going like they were putting Messiah earned the pedestal that people were putting them on by winning so many national championships. But every team was. I won't say every team, but the majority of teams that would go in to play against Messiah was playing against the national champion.
Yeah.
But they were playing against more than just the national champion.
Yeah.
And so they maintained that, they locked that in. But then, as the it changed because who won it? The NESCAC team started winning it. And when that NESCAC team, even the first one wins it, you're playing against the national champion. And if you get a result or play well against the national champion, and then you go play a team out of conference, well, they're not the national champion. So, well, we should beat them.
Yeah.
And so you just have a stronger mindset going into games if you cultivate it well. That's not to say that it goes like that every time. You need to get a result, or you need to feel like you got a moral win against the national champion team to kind of ride that line a little bit.
And that carries on for years. Like, if you're, like you said, if you cultivate it well enough, I mean, there is still a prestige, and oh man, if you go up against Messiah, can you beat Messiah? If you beat Messiah, wow, that's something to hang your hat on, right? Like, because it's such a storied program, and even though they haven't won,
I mean, that's interesting you say that, and as you do, I'm thinking about, it doesn't necessarily go on for years because there's definitely been teams. If you go down and look at the list, there's teams that have won the national championship and then not even gotten a sniff after that. So I think to analyze that, it probably takes an established culture, meaning we got there, but we got there doing this. This wasn't like just haphazard, and next year we're going to play this way, or we're going to do this thing next year. It takes an established culture, and probably you could look in the NESCAC and go like, they pretty much have to identify who they are in every regard. Like in recruiting, they're trying to separate who they are in terms of like come to our school instead of that school because we do this, and so having that defined definition of who you are as a team helps sustain that longevity of that belief.
Oh, it's clearly you don't win the national championship, like you said, haphazardly. That is very clear to me as all the teams who have gone through and I've watched. Like, there is something unique to that program that is built out this foundation structure program in such a way where year in and year out, that's where their bet is. This is who we are. This is what we're doing, and the chips will fall where they may. And the fact that they're good enough to get to a national championship or win a national championship rests on that foundation. It doesn't rest on the fact that they were lucky, right? Like it's not. There's some element to that, I think, but
you
it
can
is
ride
much,
the luck. Yeah.
Right.
Gotta,
yeah,
you got to be strong enough that like the percentages are still in your favor. Like
correct.
If you get terrible weather, snowball, or we weren't complete enough to overcome that snowball.
Right.
If you get a bad ref. You get a really tough draw, Babson Middlebury. You've got to be deep enough, strong enough, and you got to believe strong enough that, or well enough that you're going to overcome the bad bounces you come away. And
but it's those inflection points that I think make the national championship that much more possible. Is when you are able to work through that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, this could either break us or it could just make us 10 times stronger. And if you're able to work through I'm not saying like if you'd won the Snow Bowl, right? Like what's your mentality? Oh my God, we just played in the worst possible conditions and we won. And so everything after that becomes this is easy. We're just playing a soccer game here. Nice weather, nice field, right? It changes. There's something about those moments that click you into that next gear, which I think make that national championship or whatever it is that much closer to attain, right? And I think those moments in hindsight are very clear, right? Like, oh, it was that one penalty, it was that one game, it was that 20 minutes where they put on the performance, and too bad you can't predict those ahead of time, right? Like, so.
Right. Yeah, and you always pick and choose those moments because you pull out that moment and forget about. Wait a minute, didn't they have like 3 breakaways? That they missed? Oh, okay, you're right. I stand corrected. Or no, those were breakaways, but they weren't great chance breakaways. No, I just forgot about that, and you have a good point. So maybe the game wasn't as close as I thought, or
Yeah. Hey, it's been a while since we talked, so I've been asking people, and this is a question. You're like the one guy I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. I have multiple questions for you now that I just thought of it, but the one question I like to ask people these days is, in all of soccer, whether it's Division III or it doesn't matter, what is the one thing you don't think we're necessarily talking about enough?
Wow.
I'm making you work for a living
today.
today.
You didn't prep me this. Like it could be shallow or deep answer.
Yeah.
Like for the U.S., the shallow answer is actually legit attackers. Growing up in my day, it seemed like you don't have developmental camps anymore, and that sounds ridiculous. That we're going to talk about U.S. world stage and developmental camps when other countries have clubs where they're signing these kids at young ages to make sure that they're developed the same way. And then I'm going to talk about developmental camps. That's ridiculous. But how are kids being taught these days? And I just, in my day, there was a camp you would go to get really good instruction because the head coaches for club teams were parents. There weren't so much educated soccer players. There was a small spattering here and there, but it was developmental camps that you go to. When you go to the camp I went to would just beat you down with reps, and that would be reps, technical inside the foot touch reps, but also dribbling reps. And so we really have incomplete wingers. They can either dribble and look fancy, but not really accomplish much. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've been around, but in a coaching sense, to see there's certain people that have these certain gifts, and they have such a pride about these gifts that they just want to show them off. The fast guys are looking for a ball over the top, and the first priority isn't to score, to win the ball and score. The first priority is just to show everybody, look, let me show you how fast I am. I'm going to beat this guy and get to this ball. I once coached a guy, he could jump to the moon. And so as a coach, you're going okay, we'll kind of set up some crossing situations, and hopefully we'll take advantage of him out jumping everybody. But what I noticed was the intricacies or subtleties of that. This kid is just trying to set himself up. So when he jumps, he gets up there and is up there and going look at me, look how big, look how high I can jump, right? Yeah. It's but can you try to head it towards the goal? And so dribbling now becomes this and one tactic. You know, we went through a phase where everybody's doing the crazy juggling, freestyle juggling and stuff like that. And I think dribbling has been pulled into that, or feints and stuff like that has been pulled into that mindset as well, where it's all for show. But like, do you really know how to set a guy up? Can you consistently beat this guy, or is this just random? Like, we're going to give it to you, and we're going to hope you beat a person, as opposed to let's give it to him because we know how he's going to beat this guy. Mm-hmm. We know what moves he likes to use. So our runs are going to be ahead of the defenders, because if he makes that step, he's actually going to step over and go down the line. So I'm going to go ahead and start running for a cross. But if he comes in this angle, I think he's going to bring it in for a possible shot, or I'll set up to give him a wall pass so he can get in behind, faking the shot. Yeah. There's no consistency in that. And, you know, when I teach moves, it's like I for our team, like this past fall, I'm teaching moves to our wingers, going like, man, I got ahead of the cart here, thinking like they just kind of know this stuff, and then when I go through the moves, I'm like, oh man, they're struggling even to understand the concepts and the tight subtleties within a move. It's just not the move. Like, go onto YouTube, learn how to do a move, and they do it and they do it and they do it. But like, they're doing it from 8 yards away from the guy. And so just like golf has, sorry, I'm wandering all over the place, but just like golf, you just can't grab a club and follow a YouTube video and go like, yeah, I'm going to break 80 today. There's so many intricacies to it. I don't think dribbling and feinting has as much as golf, but there's still like key subtle components that you need to know to be able to consistently beat that player. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people that I see doing just scissors do it wrong, because I haven't been taught like this big, like I make fun of people. Anybody who's been at camp with me said I'll make fun because I do a thing that looks like river dance, and I'm like, that is not a move, but it's like so common that people are doing things that don't look like what they should be presenting. Like a feint is a fake of an action that would make a defender react. But so many moves, if you like, you know, you've gone through it with your son in the youth leagues, so many moves are kind of like the equivalent of a UFC fighter being like 10 feet away and going like, whoa, watch out. Like, that's not even close to me. I'm not going to react to it. So like, I remember teaching, like I teach a move to get pressure off your back, and this guy loved this move, and so every time he got the ball, he was looking to do it, but he had his head so focused down on the ball and didn't understand the move that twice he almost got concussions because he just ran into the defender doing the move. And it's like, okay, let's try to combine the components here. Is like, what's the purpose of the move? Is the number one function you got to lean on first, and take the tools I'm giving you and really put that puzzle together so you beat the player consistently instead of just spitting out a move. Sorry.
I think there's two. I think that's okay. I don't mind. You covered a bunch of different things. I've been saying for a while. I mean, this is one of my things. I think one of the worst things that happened was when U.S. Soccer, I don't want to say decommissioned, or I don't know what, put the IMG Bradenton thing,
youth camp,
whatever, where they put less focus on it. And I've been saying we should come up with 5 IMG academies, 10 across the U.S., and each of them become these places where our most talented players go for that next level training at whatever ages. I think it
sounds like. So what you don't know is that a conversation like that actually happened, and I was on it there at the time, and this was after our failure to not qualify for the World Cup. And so there was kind of a text chain that went out It was mostly D1 coaches, but I happen to know the person well who organized this, and he was leading a. I mean, was it self-serving? Maybe a little bit, but it didn't mean that the concept was wrong. But he was a part of kind of one of those schools that brings in players to basically develop pros.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so the talk was about having more high schools or
yeah,
specific process where you bring in younger players and you school them, but you also
yeah,
they train two times a day. That they're
yeah,
getting the lift, they're
yeah,
getting all the right instruction so that they become pros. And so the talk was to try to. This was also, right during the whole U.S. Academy breakup
yeah, yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
So it's like it should go to a more regional where
yeah,
you really know the players in that region well,
yeah,
and the best of those players kind of get.
yeah,
Then once you know the regions well, you take the best of those players and then
yeah.
pull them
That's
together
it. Yeah,
nationally. But they have to be spending more time training. Now,
yeah,
the MLS Academy is trying to do that, but I don't work in that world, so I don't know what the pros and
yeah.
cons or the deficiencies are of that method. But yeah, so far it doesn't seem like it's. If you go to the U.S. national team, you go like, all right, we've been through different coaches. The
Yeah,
coaches have changed, but like we're still kind of
yeah,
like in the same spot. So
yeah,
maybe it's not
I,
all on the coaches, or we're going to
yeah,
say that all the coaches were, not good enough. But
yeah,
some of these concepts have to work,
yeah.
and I'd say maybe there's some other deficiency we need to look at.
I think regionally, right? If you do the regional thing, and again, it's just my experience in Spain, right? Like players of different regions have different playing characteristics. Whether, right? Like if you play in Southern California, you're probably a lot more technical player because you're able to play for a lot longer and it's nice weather and all that. Right? This whole set of reasons to that, right? You have a Hispanic influence that, unlike anywhere else in the U.S. Oh, maybe you're in from up. There's a northeastern or a northeastern region where kids are a little bit more hard nosed because they're playing in tougher weather and what have you. They're just tougher kids. New York City, like, right, and then you're able to say, hey, we need a really hard nosed guy in this position. Well, what do we have in the Northeast? Because that's traditionally where you're going to get those type of players, and we need a better center mid. Well, let's go to Southern California. What's the pool of players that we have? I think that's where I think that to me is the only way in which we sort of take advantage of the amount of kids playing soccer in the United States is creating these regional places that, again, I get it's other people's money right now, but it ends up being, multiple Bradentons, multiple IMG academies, and you're able to focus those kids on, look, you're selected, you're in this camp not because you're going to be one heck of a college soccer player, but you have the talents and the wherewithal to be a professional player at some point, and we're just going to help you develop along those lines because we think you're going to be a professional, but you're also going to be a contributor to the national teams. And I think, anyhow, I can go on about that. And then the other thing, I think we often forget, and I think we've forgotten a lot about that, about purpose, about the purpose of doing things on the field. And what is the purpose? What is the purpose of moving without the ball? What is the purpose of making a move, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
the purpose is not to make a move and look good. The purpose is to get behind somebody, right? Like there's a whole you beat your defender. It forces another defender to move, which gives space, I think by and large, I think we've totally forgotten purpose and why do we do the things we do. And I think it's because we have this notion that everything should be freewheeling and kids should figure it out and the game's the best teacher and all that stuff, which I don't necessarily disagree, but
It takes, yeah.
right. I
And
just think that there's a lot more to it than just sort of like, yeah, they'll figure it out. No, I think there's a lot
eventually,
more.
but do we have
Yeah.
the time?
Do we have
Yeah.
the time? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a challenge as a coach. Like, I totally believe in implicit training,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to explicit, where I explain everything and then, okay, can you do what I explain, instead of setting a problem. Basically, the same idea that I said earlier, that we have to go through the games,
Yeah.
because then that's implicit training as they pick up that experience in the games and go like, I want to solve this problem. I'm motivated to solve this problem. Here's the answer. And I will never forget the answer, because I wanted to know the answer, as opposed to being force-fed an answer. And, that applies to what you're saying, I think. But I also, you have to think too, is like the purpose. Like, I'm thinking about like leaning too much into the concept that is a little derivative, but the jack of all trades. If we keep changing like who we are and keep trying to fit a mold, we're never honing in on like, you know what, we're just going to be this, right? We're going to, run like crazy. We're going to be Americans that are like workhorses. Like we could be like the standing characteristic is just very athletic workhorses that play good soccer. And if we just hone in on that, instead of being like, we want to be as fancy as Messi or whoever, like we're producing some players that look fancy, but then the last big tournament, I'd see like three guys in a triangle passing to themselves, and like it just like looks like friend pickup, and going like he's 5 yards away from you. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Oh, you're just, hey, you can have the ball now. No, here, I want you to have the ball now. It's like, what are we doing, guys? Like, why are you guys standing 5 yards apart from each other with no defender in the vicinity? Spread out, work some sort of purpose, instead of it's random, like pinball of like, here, you can have the ball. Why'd you go to him? Well, he was open. Well, I mean, yeah, so is the keeper. Why didn't you pass to him then? He's the most open. So what's your purpose of like what you're trying to accomplish? And sometimes that looks lost.
Well, I think you know what, like you said that, and it brought a thought to mind where I think part of our problem, and I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not sure. I'm sure there's a psychology to it, but I think our biggest problem is that we're always looking elsewhere to find the examples of how we should play, right? So, hey, we should play like Spain because Spain won the World Cup, and then and look at them, and they can move the ball. We should be like Spain. Okay, we shouldn't be like Spain. We should be like Brazil. Look, they're so free. Right? Look at that. No, we shouldn't be like Brazil. Like, we should be like England, this melting pot of all types of players in the Premier League, and then we're never saying to ourselves like, well, who are we? Like, who are we as a soccer? Like it or not, like we are where we are. I always say, right, and this is totally off field, but like, maybe we're not destined to be great at the game. Maybe that is a reality. But we're never going to find it. Yeah, you're hanging up on me now. Right? Like, maybe we're not intended to be these World Cup champions that we aspire to be, because it's a very American thing to aspire to.
Well, I'm a guy that believes in reps, right?
Yeah.
And so how are we going to sit here and go like, the guys on our national team got just as many reps as the guys on the Brazilian national team or the Spanish national team? It's not happening.
No. Yeah.
And I got a book in my office that says the team, or the player with the most reps wins.
Yeah.
The player with the most reps has the advantage. And so we actually have to come up with a system that's better than everybody else's system, because we're deficient in terms
Seems-
of technical ability because we lack the reps because those kids are waking up every day and going out to the park and getting rep after rep, and they have to prove that rep to be able to be picked to play on that team. And if they're not, they go like, well, I want to play. And so they take a ball or something that's round and go work on it until they're good enough. That's not what happens in the U.S. because everybody in the U.S. is already telling them, you're good enough. You're awesome, buddy.
Here's some orange slices in your snack.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think again because we look elsewhere, we think we just need to superficially do what they do, and I don't think there's a whole layers upon layers of things that get done that happen there that don't happen here, and I think we should just recognize the fact that we are just a different culturally, sporting wise, like there are so many different elements and aspects that we have to deal with as a soccer culture that I think if we recognize that, maybe we can come up with some consensus as to how we should be as a national team, right? Or what we expect of our national teams. And I think I will say probably more emphasis on the men's side because on the women's side, I don't think there's as many complexities. Although I will say that the rest of the world is catching up, and I don't think we've necessarily moved as fast. We moved forward as fast. But anyhow.
That's human nature.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Right. Like, I think we sat
and
on.
You see it like Hopkins. You go out in our lobby, and Hopkins is littered with lacrosse being the champions and the monarch of everything. But as you get more and more lacrosse players, it's harder to get the monopoly on recruiting those players. Chapel Hill women's soccer went through the same thing. Dynasty. The game grew, and then now it's harder to maintain your monopoly on it. And so that's what same thing. U.S. women's soccer, set the standard. And when you set the standard, you have to fight against complacency as everybody else is fighting to catch up to you, and it's easier to catch up than to hold that standard.
Yeah, when you do have that monopoly, it does dull the mind, right? Like it dulls you into thinking like, well, we still have time to be the monopoly. We still have time, and then before you know it, the time is passing. You're like, what just happened? And then we do what we do, and we just sort of hyperanalyze everything that's wrong, right? But I think that is magnified 150% on the men's side, just because we've never had the monopoly, right? We've never, and I think it's just, Anyhow, you got me off on a tangent. I blame you. So,
okay,
Coach. Hey,
apologies.
Yeah. Apologies accepted. Don't let it happen again. Just send me that shirt you're wearing. That's a nice Under Armour there.
You don't want that. This is like, again, this is as old as like the stuff hanging on the walls.
Anyhow, thank you very much. It's always a great catching up with you. Wish you and your men the best. As always, I will be watching. I'm a big fan. So,
is your son still kicking the PKs that way?
Yes. He is still. He's gone strictly from the no step to he does the one step where he positions himself as a no step, waits for the whistle to blow, and like act like he's going to walk backwards, and he'll either take it with the no step depending on how the keeper is reacting, or he'll take one step back pretending like he's going to do multiple steps and then go and strike it. Because once the whistle blows, you don't, right? Like, you can do it whenever. So I think he's just trying to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, there was, before we did it in the fall, right? You couldn't find any video of something like that.
Yeah.
and then I think in the Carabao Cup
Yeah.
in two separate games, because I had like all the coaches that I've been like doing this, and they're like, "You're crazy," and then okay, maybe not as crazy as I thought. They sent me the videos of those guys, and that's what that is a derivative of what we do, and I understand exactly. It's easier to build up power that way. But the negative you take away is you do alert the keeper that something's about to happen. So you give him a margin of error on his alertness and him being ready to react, as opposed to I don't know what's going. Like, when's this going to happen?
There's two things that and watching him and trying it myself, there's two things that I've come to the conclusion about the no step. I think it's tremendously effective. I think if keepers are onto you as a player, and that they're able to react to it without reacting, right? Like they don't anticipate what you're going to do, but they are going to wait for you to hit the ball. And I think to minimize that risk, the two things is you have to hit it with as much power as you possibly can with the control that you have. And I think you almost have to aim for like the upper half of the goal, if not higher, upper third of the goal, I would actually say. Because the keeper its momentum is going to carry them sideways, isn't necessarily going to carry them up. So
I mean, you got it. Yeah, there's a zone that the keeper just can't get. And
correct.
You hear it all the time when people take regular PKs and like they hit it upper 90 and you go, keepers, what can you do?
Doesn't even matter. Doesn't even matter. Guess right. All those things. They're just not going to physically. It's impossible for them to get to, and I think that's
the whole point. Is like, all right, if that's the zone the keeper can't get to, what's the best way to kick the ball to hit that zone, most accurately hit that zone? And I would say not by running up, but by and if you hit that zone, actually power. Now power is relevant. You can't just like soft chip it there. But you can generate plenty of power. I mean. There's people trying to do it after we did it. Now, like I've had coaches say, I tried to go out and I hurt my hip flexor and stuff like that. And it's like, well, that's an indication you're doing it wrong. And so I've hit way more. Like I have to be the king of taking these PKs. And so I can teach. I have no interest in teaching Muhlenberg how to kick these PKs the right way. But you know, I would be interested in like teaching a pro team or something. Certainly Man City, I would love to like go like, hey, I think I might be able to help. Like surely you have somebody technical who can hit that spot repeatedly. And if so, there is absolutely nothing a keeper can do about it. But you're right. You know, like heading for the low zones, you start entering an area that like power becomes way more important than accuracy.
Correct.
But you know, if that's the case, then you shouldn't be taking a no step.
That I agree. Anyhow, all right, Coach. This was fantastic as always. Do appreciate it. Hopefully, we can catch up in person one of these days. I'll stop by and we will discuss. Come on,
head out to the trip at Kenyon and Denison. And
I would love to. Have you ever been there before? Have you ever been to Gambier?
I've been to Ohio Wesleyan, but I haven't been.
Beautiful field.
The only trip.
Beautiful field. Field. I'm a big fan. I'm actually supposed to have Coach Travis Wall from Kenyon on. He was supposed to do it maybe yesterday or today, or he can't do it. He's out recruiting, so we're going to try to do it next week.
So, not to put this on you're going to cut this part.
Right? I can. I will. I'll cut it. Hang on. But so as not to forget, let me hit stop. Bye now. Bye, everybody.